Now, I understand you scaled an e-com brand to over 20 million in annual revenue. That's no small feat. What tactic was most successful in helping you reach that goal?
Tactically, SEO was the biggest. It was an industry where we were not allowed to do paid advertising, no Facebook ads, no Google ads, no anything. So it was basically organic traffic. Link building was the number one thing, especially with e-commerce. Once you get your category pages and product pages and everything mapped out and you have the technical foundation in place, a lot of it comes down to link building.
What's your main strategy?
There's three main strategies. I had a mentor and worked one-on-one with him, which is probably the biggest growth lever I think anybody could get. I took it to the extreme. I moved out across the world and was like, I will do whatever you want if you teach me how to scale websites.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Today we have Alex Worsman, an online entrepreneur and SEO expert who scaled an e-com brand to 20 million and now runs the Shitty SEO Advice newsletter. So, Alex, thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Appreciate it. Cool to be on. Hopefully I can give some good advice.
Oh, I'm sure. You have to have the best newsletter name in the game. Like, I was pretty excited to see that. So I have lots of questions on that and how you arrived to that. But, first and foremost, I did want to talk to you a little bit about your background. You and I were talking offline about some of our travels. So kick me off. From what I understand, you made some big life changes while pursuing a career in SEO, including moving to Southeast Asia to pursue building sites. What did you learn from those big leaps, and where did that land you today?
Yeah, so I got started in SEO when I was in college at the University of Missouri, and it was my junior year, I believe, and I actually started out doing Instagram for an agency for a brand, and was quickly moved off of it because I do not have a visual design eye. And they moved me to link building, which I had no idea what it was. I was pretty terrible at it. But 4 days after graduation, so they gave me a full-time job offer whenever I graduated. I was looking at interviewing with Pepsi, a couple of other kind of these companies that people from my university would go and work for in Chicago, St. Louis, Kansas City, the surrounding area. But this agency was like, or you could move out to Southeast Asia, not make a lot of money, but you're in Southeast Asia. And so 4 days after I graduated college, I packed my bags, moved to Bali. I did the whole, digital nomad, as you and I discussed about, did that lifestyle for about 4 years. I learned a lot about SEO and building websites, obviously, while I was out there. I had a mentor and worked one-on-one with him, which was probably the biggest growth lever I think anybody could get, is find someone who's very successful and then just freaking work underneath them. And I took it to the extreme. I moved out, across the world and was like, I will do whatever you want if you teach me how to scale websites. But I think more than anything, I just learned how much I love internet marketing, in the sense that it can afford a very luxurious lifestyle in the way of time. So I'm not obsessed with making $100 million a year. I'm not Alex Hormozy or somebody like that. I really am that stereotypical 4-hour work week, Tim Ferriss lifestyle entrepreneur. And moving out there, seeing what SEO and internet marketing can do, just opened my eyes to all of that.
I understand you scaled an e-com brand to over 20 million in annual revenue. That's no small feat. What would you say, what tactic was most successful in helping you reach that goal?
Yeah, first and foremost, it wasn't just me, right? Big team. Also wasn't my brand, unfortunately, but I was the head of marketing over there. So I was in charge of all of the marketing aspects. And so it's more than anything, a solid team is the biggest thing, right? I could not have done that by myself. But in terms of tactically, SEO was the biggest. It was an industry where we were not allowed to do paid advertising, no Facebook ads, no Google ads, no anything. So it was basically organic traffic is what you were stuck with, as well as email marketing was a big lever as well. So for us, it was an e-commerce brand, and I got obsessed with affiliate marketing. I used to be part of a community called Dynamite Circle, and I went out to a conference in Bangkok and learned a lot about, met a ton of affiliate marketers and saw their playbook in SEO, their whole content marketing playbook. And that's when I started building my first site. And once I did that, I was like, cool, can we actually replicate this on the e-commerce brand? Um, and it worked extremely well. So writing product reviews, roundup reviews, X, Y, and Z, basically building an affiliate arm on the e-commerce site, but you recommend products that you sell, right? And for this specific e-commerce site, there was no like I would say issues with recommending product because it was a retailer, so they had everyone. They didn't have their own brands, so it wasn't like, what is the best water bottle? Well, it's mine. Like it didn't matter. So that was a big, I think, tactical change. But in terms of other general SEO strategies, link building was like the number one thing, especially with e-commerce. Once you get your category pages and product pages and everything mapped out, and you have the technical foundation in place, a lot of it comes down to link building.
Okay, because in that same vein, I want to talk to you a little bit more about kind of what you were doing in the e-com space. So, recent observations suggest Google is showing a clear preference for e-com sites. And what changes have you noticed in this regard? And how should content creators and affiliate marketers adapt their strategies in response?
Yeah, ecom is definitely, there's a lot of people moving to ecom. A lot of affiliate marketers are switching to ecom right now. A lot of people I know in the space have made that move. So I think, and it's interesting, I think there's a lot more diversity in the search results. So if you search best fish finder, for instance, you're going to get ecom category pages. You're going to get a couple of affiliate sites with roundup reviews, and you're going to get a lot of forums. And you might see apps, you might see like all this different search results than what we were used to, right? You Google that query 2 or 3 years ago, it's just a list of roundup reviews from affiliate sites. So I think realizing that diversity in your organic traffic strategy is huge. And, if you see a forum ranking, that like discussions and forums feature showing up in the SERPs, and now you have AI overviews as well, right? I think realizing that, if that discussion and forum is in the number 2 position, you're not going to outrank them unless you build a forum on your site. You're not going to outrank, if an ecom page is in number 3 position and number 5 position, you're not going to outrank them unless you have the ecom arm. And then same thing with a product review or a listicle. So I think trying to be multifaceted in your organic traffic strategy is huge now. I also think more than anything else, we need to put the user, and this is really speaking to affiliate marketers. And I think we got hammered, and I can say this because I got sites absolutely smoked because of HCU. I think putting the user first more than anything is absolutely paramount. When I look at affiliate sites that are still ranking and doing really well, they're heavy on visuals. They're heavy on interactive elements. And, it increases dwell time, it increases user engagement and all that stuff. But I think at the end of the day, that's just a proxy for user satisfaction and solving their problem. So I don't think you should try and game user engagement and game dwell time and game bounce rate and all this stuff. They're KPIs, but at the end of the day, like viewing your site as product and solving their problem is going to be the biggest thing, and kind of shifting away from, what used to work. So I know for us, like we used to use Surfer, ClearScope, all these content optimization tools. We've ditched those now. So we'll have a keyword for the URL and the H1. That's it. Like we don't really try and optimize content outside of that. In terms of SEO, we really just try and put the user first more than anything.
Okay. Ooh, I love that take. As someone in content myself, I have questions on that, but I have a load of questions kind of related to that. We'll get there. But before we do, I do want to talk to you about your newsletter because, just from having talked to you just a little bit, kicking this off, you've got a lot of expertise in this domain. You have a lot of things to say. What got you started in sort of going out and creating your own newsletter, Shitty SEO Advice? And so what's your approach and mission in that? And how do you manage to publish new advice every week?
Yeah. So what got me started was, I think more so like people like Matt Diggity, Nick Leroy, and other people in the space just speaking to how powerful a personal brand is,
Mm.
uh, and that's really was the motivator. And also, I will say it's very handy when I used to do this all the time. We use ClickUp for project management, and I would write out these long comments and create these videos of something that we needed to do, and here's my like why we're doing it. And now I can just send team members like an article on my website and be like, this is what we're doing. It explains everything. So that's helpful. But I mean, more than anything else, it was personal brand. And like the name Shitty SEO Advice, the mission, and like, well, first of all, it's named that because it's multifaceted, but everybody and their mother is promoting like the latest AI hack that's going to scale your site to 10,000 people per day, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's outplayed and overdone. And so, I think it goes back down to the roots of SEO, high quality links, solve users' problems. And that's the 80/20 that I want to focus on. In addition, I mean, it's sarcasm, right? And I'm a very sarcastic person, and that's the type of people that I want to attract. I've realized also, I've worked with a lot of clients, and I've realized that I work better with certain people that I get along with. And, if I can be more picky and if I can attract those people, that my life will be better. It's not, again, it goes back to like, it's not just about money. Like I want to enjoy the journey as well. And I think that's the whole like branding messaging within it. But in terms of the goal, it's just sharing stuff that works. Like I'm building sites, I'm working with clients, I'm actually doing this stuff. I'm not just posting theoreticals. Every once in a while, I might have a theory, but if I have a theory, I'm typically going to test it out and see if it actually works or not. I think there's a gap in the market for that with Twitter, LinkedIn. Like you just see the same regurgitated BS on there, and I'm guilty of it. Everyone's guilty of it. But I want to steer away from that and just talk about what actually works. How do I publish new advice every week?
Yeah, how do you?
So I just took a month off, funny enough. But
Amazing.
I actually just wrote my next newsletter. I'm getting back into it. It's pretty easy. I keep a weekly task list of everything I do. I actually track my time as well because I review my time and see where I'm spending it. And when I do that review, 9 times out of 10, I like just pick something that I worked on throughout the previous week. And I'm like, here's what I did. And you can go very nuanced with it. So for instance, if you say like, okay, I did a content audit on xyandz.com. Well, what did that content audit look like? Okay, well, first I had to check for cannibalization. How do you do that? That's an article. Okay, second, I had to check for indexing issues. How do you do that? That's an article. So it's just really taking practical stuff that I'm doing out of my life and then turning it into articles.
Is making sure that the expertise or the things you're actually thinking about on a weekly basis aren't getting lost. I mean, it's so easy to probably be working on that and not realize that some people could really value or get value from that. And yeah, I think it's a nice way of actually almost like, I don't want to say monetizing, but making the best use of the things that you're already doing, if that makes sense. Building a brand in a way that feels like authentic to you. As you were saying, there's a lot of BS in the space. You don't want to be contributing to that.
Yeah, and it goes back to what I said as well about like just being able to send an article to a team member. I literally did this today. The newsletter that I'm publishing on Sunday, I sent to team members because we have to actually start rolling it out across our site. And so there's, and then perhaps if I worked on something this week, I go and read my ClickUp comment that I made and the video that I made. And then I'm like, this should be an SOP that we save. Let's just make my newsletter a public SOP. In some ways, right? Like that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And again, useful. Like you can't really BS an SOP, can you? Like that's that's going to be a living document that's useful to somebody. Yeah. Okay, so I've got a bunch of different topics that I want to cover here, but this is kind of going back to some of the things you were saying before on link building. I'll start off, with your experience in SEO or your experience in e-com. So when it comes to securing links for e-commerce sites, like what's your main strategy?
Yeah, there's three main strategies. guest posts for sure. Like those still work. We have a little bit more of a nuanced approach to it. It's not blasting 10,000 dear sir emails. I don't think that works. Two is statistic articles. I call it lazy link building, which I'm sure we'll get into later down the road. But that's kind of our passive link building strategy where we naturally acquire links. But the third is probably my favorite. Again, it relates to statistics, but it's about creating a piece of content that invokes emotion is really how I look at it. So I think a lot of link builders fail in typical like link insert outreach because their content's just crap. It doesn't like, it's just a rehashed article on, I don't know, like there's a million different things, but I'll get an example of this is I have a site in the fishing niche. And one of our articles that did the best was a piece that we did on overfishing. So it's not necessarily related to recreational anglers. It's more commercial, but it was still tangentially related. And it's pretty political in nature. Like a lot of the oceans are getting overfished. Who's most guilty of doing it? And within that, yes, it is very data driven. But I think most importantly is we take a stance and we kind of call people out and, just almost like an op-ed more than anything else. And those get shared amazingly. And even if people disagree with you, a lot of the times they'll link to you because it's a thought-provoking piece where you take a stance. And those that do agree with you, I mean, the likelihood that they share the content is vastly greater. Like we've got a lot of podcast interviews because of this type of thing where, people actually read your content when you pitch them on it. Like I feel like a lot of SEOs forget this aspect of it. So that's by far my favorite, like link insert strategy is create, we kind of, I wouldn't say we always get political, but we do take a stance on topics. And those are usually like a more expensive writer. We're going more in depth. Like we do not half-ass those pieces of content because we're trying to build links. And at the end of the day, link building is getting people to share your article. What makes it shareable?
Two quick follow-up questions that just come to mind as you talked about that. You're saying it's a bit more expensive to do that. So how time intensive is that to do? And then how often are you trying to tackle those pieces and create those pieces?
Yeah, so time intensive, it'll take a good amount of time. I wouldn't be able to, I mean, it's different, right? It goes from writer, editor, publisher. Publishing doesn't take that long. Most of our sites are on WordPress or something of that nature. But, if you're adding graphics into that as well. So, I mean, I'd be looking at 10 hours to produce a piece of content like that. And it goes back to also how intense the editor gets, because again, we put like a heavy emphasis on this. So maybe it gets up to 15 hours. If, it also depends on how well did the writer do in the very beginning, right? And is this just a freelancer that we got for a one-off piece, or is this somebody in-house? Because a lot of SEO writers, we wouldn't use SEO writers for this topic. We don't even think about SEO whenever we do these articles, outside of link building, of course. Right. In terms of how many are we doing, depends on the brand, depends on the site, depends on how many links we need. Like that overfishing piece, I think we got 80 links to it or something of that nature.
Wow.
And so, for that, the way I link build is I start with a root topic, so overfishing, and then I go and find all of these supplementary keywords in terms of like overfishing statistics, who overfishes the most, et cetera, et cetera. You just go to matching terms inside of Ahrefs and then collect all of the referring domains pointing to every page about overfishing. And, I think we had thousands of opportunities to send people emails. And so, for the fishing niche, you only need to do it, once a year, once every 6 months, depending on how, it really depends on how competitive the space is. But fishing niche is a lot easier than most other, like VPN or something of that nature. Like you probably want to do those every month, and it'd be a lot more intensive.
Okay. No, that's super interesting because I think, you're talking about this. You're talking about sort of the work and strategy that goes into those data-driven pieces. But I was thinking probably the question that most people had in mind is like, okay, I hear it, it works, but how?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if I'm asking you something that's within the same vein here. So, feel free to tell me otherwise, but how do you build links to your money/product pages? Like, is there a creative way to leverage non-commercial content to indirectly benefit those money pages?
Yeah. So direct link building for it, it's usually guest posts via, I call it contributor slots, which we can get into, but
Okay.
I don't find a way to build direct links to our product and category pages or money pages outside of guest posts or paying people, frankly. Because at the end of the day, they know what it is. They know what you're trying to do. The internet's not new anymore. That said, using those non-commercial pieces, or if the overfishing, maybe we add a couple of strategic internal links. You could do a related post at the bottom of the article that links to your money pages, or you could do like something in the sidebar as well. Typically, we don't add any of those elements in place until we're done doing outreach for it. Because if you have those elements in place while you're doing outreach, they can kind of be like, we know what the game is here. So we try to make those pages like no commercial in nature whatsoever, no pop-ups, no ads, no internal links to money pages, anything until we're done sending outreach, and then we start throwing everything in place. But yeah, I would say the biggest thing is just strategically internal links throughout the content, maybe a related post at the bottom, something in the sidebar, but the in content is going to pass the most link juice. So we'll just, you can even just do an element like related or, something along those lines.
Okay. Based on everything you said, again, I don't know if you've answered this in a way, but it's worth asking because I love asking this question to all the different SEOs I talk to. Do you have a go-to link building tactic that you just absolutely swear by?
Yeah. What I just outlined, absolutely love it. Absolutely love it because nobody else is really doing it, I feel like.
Okay.
I just don't see it. I would also say contributor slots, which people probably care most about getting links to money pages. And so for us, we do what's not scalable is what we always say. And so we will try and get contributor slots on websites versus trying to get a guest post. So in my opinion, if you outreach to a website, let's say, I don't know, again, fishing niche, let's just take this for example, Bass Pro or Cabela's, which sells fishing gear here in the US. You say anything about a guest post, they're going to ignore you. They don't even care. They don't open your email. That's it, right? However, if you pose as a freelance writer and you say that you're trying to do work and here's your expertise and here's these websites that you've written for, and you want 8 cents per word and you can do everything yourself and you'll do the first one pro bono, that gets a conversation started. And then you write 1, maybe 2 pieces, maybe you don't link back to your site, but then finally once you get a little bit of latitude with the editor, you can start adding links back to your desired website. So contributor slots is a big one. Posing as freelance writers is massive for us, especially when it comes to getting websites that are hard for everybody else.
That's interesting. I mean, you're the first person I've talked to that has mentioned that. It's not just a you thing, or you hear that more people are doing that in the space?
No, my friend told me about it years ago.
Okay.
It was absolutely killing it. And then I tried it and sure enough, it works really well. So just, you don't mention anything about trying to build links.
Okay. You mentioned this earlier. You were talking about how everyone's kind of posing online and talking about their newest AI tactic. Now, I do have to ask you, or I want to ask you about how AI is playing in your link building strategy. How are you personally leveraging it? And, can you give me some specific examples of how you're using it day to day?
Yeah, for link building specifically, I'm not actually in the nitty gritty too much. We have a big team who handles most of that, but I can tell you right now that the biggest thing is personalization, especially that very first sentence or two of your email. That's like I think that's the 80-20 because
Hmm.
most people can open up an email and tell right away if it's a link builder and just delete the email. Uh, Now, if you can have a super personalized sentence towards the person, towards an article that they wrote, uh, towards anything related to them, and know who you're actually reaching out to. So you're not trying to personalize, if you're reaching out to Joe at abc.com, like, don't write personalization about an article that Cameron wrote, right? So it has to be related to Joe. You're reaching out to that individual. But that first sentence or two is so powerful because they will just, I mean, we've gotten multiple emails back where like, this is the best pitch I've ever gotten, et cetera, et cetera. And it's all because it's like 1 to 2 sentences. That's all it takes. That is all it takes. So that's our biggest thing is just personalization. And I think it's so simple, but I think people sleep on it.
I guess conversely, what are some common, let's call it like misconceptions or traps in link building that SEO professionals should be aware of? For instance, are high domain authority links, are they always valuable? Or how about, .edu links or link exchanges? Like, walk me through some examples, maybe just some pitfalls that people often experience and just how to avoid them.
Yeah, I think more than anything, we kind of have like a three-step three-step approach. I mean, the high DR, low traffic. I think most people are kind of onto that by now.
Okay.
But I would just double down on that. If the site is getting zero traffic, even if it's getting 300 visits per month according to Ahrefs or whatever, like it's probably not going to help you, right? If you go, it's just probably not getting crawled that much. In addition, I go and look at outbound anchor text and see if there's like casino, CBD, anything of that nature, and if there's a ton of it. And I think, I'm trying to think of what else. Yeah, high DR sites, low traffic. The last would just be like a smell test of going and looking at the site. Like just take a couple, like 30 seconds and go look at the homepage and see if it's a real business or not. And I'm going to kind of like argue with myself here where if it's an e-commerce brand and I can tell that they're real, or if it's a fishing charter business or anything of that nature, but it's got low traffic, I might still get a link on that because it's a real business. And so I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to it. That said, it's not going to be high up on my priority list. What I really want to see is websites with traffic. That's like the number one thing. I don't even really care about DR. I would like if you have a site that has a DR of 2 but 10,000 traffic, that's a good link in my opinion, and it's contextually relevant. You also want to look at page traffic as well, right? So it's the page that this is another thing with guest posting. Sorry, I'm going on a rant here, but guest posting is pointless if you do a 500-word article that never even ranks, never sees traffic whatsoever. So all of our guest posts, and it kind of goes hand in hand with why we get contributor slots. We target a keyword and we write for it, and we want our guest posts to rank because, like, if our link's on that page, in my opinion, it's going to be a better link if that guest post can rank and it's getting traffic. So that's another common pitfall. I just think like 500-word AI garbage guest post, like, cool, you got a link, but is it actually helping? And you can write the guest post in a way that actually drives referral traffic to your brand. Like, people don't think about this. So if I pitch Ahrefs on an article for the best SEO newsletters or something to that effect, does it really matter if my brand ranks for it or if Ahrefs ranks for it if I list shitty SEO advice as number one and I get referral traffic from it? Same thing, if we go back to the fishing example, if I make money through, I don't know, kayak fishing rods or something like that, and then I write an article on how to choose a kayak fishing rod on another website, right? I don't actually really care too much if I rank number one for that keyword. But if I do a guest post on kayak.com, I'm just naming websites here, and it ranks number one, and within it promotes my brand, then that's a win. And what if I write that same article on my website and now I have number one and number two and number three, you know? So it's, I think that's another thing. It's just like doing stuff that doesn't scale and just thinking more than just like these kind of short term, get a link, get a link, get a link. That's all I care about.
And this kind of builds off of what we're just talking about. We're talking about, guest posts and how to make them the most valuable. I know earlier you were saying that really kind of crushing it with those early sentences for your guest post outreach is kind of how you make these opportunities happen. But I was wondering, are there any other key elements for a successful guest post pitch? And I mean, what would you say are your do's and don'ts for those outreach emails and making sure you make those opportunities happen?
We don't do like the typical guest post outreach. We're doing more of this contributor slot outreach. And there it's like, I never mentioned that we're trying to build links. I never mentioned, I never mentioned the word guest post. I never mentioned that. I think the big thing there is one, having a signature, having an actual author who has written elsewhere on the web, like online, having a LinkedIn profile. For our fishing site, we also he also runs our YouTube channel. So like you can go and see that this dude is real. And again, we actually ask for money. We give them our per word rate because that's just more realistic. Like in my opinion, if somebody says, "Hey, I'll write this article on your site for free," it's like, no, you won't. It's like something's going on here. So I do think there's something to that in terms of, you're just standing out. But I always say one thing I will say is we always say, I'll do the first one pro bono. So it kind of does get your foot in the door, but it makes it look like, hey, long term, I'm a serious writer who expects to get paid.
Okay, cool. What's your position on paid links?
I think they work.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not totally against them. I mean, a lot of people are selling links on the internet, more people than I think SEOs realize.
Really?
Yeah, definitely. And once you start getting in these groups and, I got a contributor slot over here and I can get a link over here and everybody's just kind of, I've had writers reach out to me on Bankrate and big websites on LinkedIn and offer me not guest posts, but link inserts within their articles. I won't name names, but like, does it like if I pay that writer $350 for a link on Bankrate, yeah, it's still a good link. So it's against Google's guidelines, but everyone's doing it. That's my opinion of it. And I think you just need to be smart about it. And again, it kind of goes back to like, is this a healthy website? Are they like, what's their outbound link ratio versus their inbound? Are they doing CBD? Are they doing casino? Is it a real business? So I factor in all of that. Now, good opportunities do arise, but I'm much more interested in getting those links you can't buy. Like if everybody else can buy the link, like we've seen it with HCU, like a bunch of these link farms just get tanked. And so it's like, was it even worth it?
So, I mean, it doesn't sound like you're against it. It's common. I kind of like your perspective of like, well, if anyone can buy that link, then like really how valuable is that in the long run? Because yeah, that was one of my questions for you is like, really what's the long-term viability of links that are being acquired from sites to sell out in the open? But I feel like you've answered that question for me.
Yeah. I just don't think it's worth it for most majority of them. And you can see this if you look at a long enough time horizon, they eventually go to zero. And so it's like, cool, that helped me for a couple months, I guess. But I'd much rather spend my time and energy figuring out a tactic that can produce long-term high quality links on websites that I know aren't going to get tanked.
Okay. Well, I want to talk to you more about the contributor slots because I do really think that's super interesting how you're doing that. You talked to me a little bit about kind of how that's working for you now, but what advice would you give to someone just starting out who wants to secure contributor slots at big sites? I mean, we're talking like brand new to the game. Is there anything different that they need to be doing?
I I think building, so I'll just take me for instance. So I have a website, all kind of fits my demeanor, I guess. It's called This Supplement Sucks. And I've put it, yeah, I know.
I'm seeing a pattern.
Yeah, I know.
I love it.
I've put it on pause because of HCU and what happened, but it was an affiliate site specifically in like the sports fitness niche. And like I bought all of these pre-workouts, hired a photographer, tested all of them, all this fun stuff. And if I were to go out and I don't have any name whatsoever in the space at all. So in the health and fitness niche. So what I would do is first, I have This Supplement Sucks. I would build a personal website with my name and kind of had like a freelance writer website basically. And again, I would update my LinkedIn to show that I'm a freelance writer in the health and fitness niche on my personal website, alexhorstmanfitness.com, whatever, Alex Horstman writer. I would showcase, I would go ahead and write 3 amazing articles or have a ghostwriter create 3 amazing articles for you. And you could even like say The Supplement Sucks was a client. If they went to the website, they would see that's me. So that would be pointless. But I think the personal website is a big thing. And just making it look legitimate. And I also I'm not afraid to get on phone calls with people. That might sound crazy, but putting a Calendly link at the bottom of your email, actually, funny enough, I won't go too in depth to the story, but a guy who did outreach to the e-commerce business that I was working for, he was also a certified financial planner, and he was able to build so many links because he would just hop on the phone with people, and he was real, and he would put it in his signature. And he kept emailing our editor, and our editor, I basically told her that like, hey, just say no to everyone. And he was so persistent. And then finally she pushed him through to me because he was like, let me talk to the marketing guy, the head of SEO, whatever. And I looked him up, and we went to the same college and we graduated the same year. And I knew his sister, and I was like, and then I just like hopped on a phone call with him, and he got a link from us. So wow. I think the biggest thing was like, yeah, man, I just hop on phone calls all the time. Like, I'm not afraid of it. So, there's an issue there where if you're using a persona, it's going to be hard, and perhaps that tactic isn't relevant for you. But I think building that personal website, having some sort of quality content that you can share with them is going to go a long way as well. And then again, not mentioning guest posts, say that you're a freelance writer trying to get into the space. Potentially as well, you can note some of their keywords. Like if you're going to Ahrefs, look at some of their articles, look at keywords in position 4 through 10 and say, hey, I think if we update this piece of content doing X, Y, and Z, then we can get you in the number 1 slot. Here's the traffic potential gain. And yeah, I think adding value, like if a writer came to me and was like, hey, you're in the number 5th position for this keyword. If we get you to number 1, you'll gain this much traffic. And this is, assuming a 1% conversion rate, this is how many more emails that you'll get, because I can see on the page you're trying to capture emails, so on and so forth. I think that would go a long way. And again, that's not scalable. That's not necessarily like easy to do. Right. But when you're pitching DR60 sites, don't even send the Dear Sir email. You're wasting your time.
But see, you say all this, and what you're talking about is complicated, and it also requires you to be a little bit more of a real human who can jump on the phone, who can create personalized outreach, et cetera. But earlier you were talking about this concept of like lazy link building.
Yeah.
So what you've just talked about, it doesn't feel lazy. So can you explain that to me a little bit more, and how it can still complement more traditional link building methods, assuming those link building methods maybe are a little less in person, as we were talking about.
So the lazy link building, we basically have 2. I would categorize it into 2. So active link building versus passive link building. Active link building is everything that we've talked about, whether you're trying to get a contributor slot or whether you're trying to get a link insert. And those link inserts aren't nearly as aggressive, right? The like aggressiveness and personalization comes down to the contributor slot. Mm-hmm. And again, you don't have to do everything that I mentioned. I think maybe like with contributor slots, the 80-20 is just having some sort of a website with previous work not mentioning guest posts, personalize those first 2 sentences, and you're going to be well on your way. But if you really want to get someone, that's where you can take it more depth. So lazy link building is basically writing content, typically around statistics, but it's not always around statistics, that naturally gets links. Okay, so how many Telegram users are there in the US? How many Telegram users are there in the world? A lot of these are very question and answer based. So it's basically, you can find article topics that journalists consistently quote within their articles whenever they write a story. So prime example, I think it was the president or CEO of Telegram got arrested for some reason. I don't remember the exact story, so sorry, Telegram CEO, if this is incorrect. But he got arrested or something in the news popped off about him. And somebody I worked with had a bunch of articles around Telegram. How many users use Telegram? How much time do people spend on Telegram? X, Y, and Z, right? So there's like 5 articles on it. Well, anytime a journalist wrote a story on that CEO, they almost always quoted within that story, how many users, how many daily active users does Telegram have? And they're grabbing that data from Google. And so they just search in Google, how many active Telegram users does, or how many active users does Telegram have? They click on the first result. It looks somewhat professional, like put together. And there's a lot of elements you can do to help with this, but then they use you as the source. So if you really want to dive deep into this, Exploding Topics by Brian Dean, this was his #1 link building strategy. This is all he did. And he has a YouTube video for it as well. So I think he'll articulate it a bit better than me. But it's basically that. So you find topics that journalists are consistently writing about and quoting, and then rank for it. The problem is, if you're a brand new site, it's going to be hard to rank for. So that's why you have to do active link building in the beginning. But then once you get to like a DR 40 or 50, depending on how hard the article topics are, you can rank for these queries and then passively get links. And this is where you can get links from journalists writing a story on BBC, Daily Mail, what have you, right? This is like the digital PR links that, like, I encourage anyone to go look at Exploding Topics, look at the backlinks over the last 30 days and filter like DR 50 plus, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about.
Well, let's say, somebody's got their niche, or they have maybe their desired audience that they want to speak to, but they're getting stuck on how to create something valuable. They haven't quite found the creative angle, or maybe they're struggling to find the data. I'm just wondering, if there's any other stones that we could turn over to talk about that, to kind of help people think a little bit more creatively in that regard.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I'm not too creative with it.
Okay.
I'm actually more data driven. And so I go and look at what's working and what's getting links right now according to Ahrefs. So I usually start very broad, like, again, overfishing statistics, if we take that. Then I look at who's ranking for that, and I look at their backlinks over the past 30, 60, and 90 days. And I want to see what pages are gaining links. So to be honest with you, I'm not creative at all. I just try and find topics in my niche that I see are getting links passively. And then that drives the creation. And I think a good starting place, if you're ever stuck, is just take your niche plus statistics. And that can work wonders.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, to sort of round this out, we're talking about how to approach the process of finding the right stats and putting that together. But let's say you managed to make it work like you did, like you had that piece take off. Like, what's maybe like the next best step? You managed to start gaining some backlinks. Is there a way to kind of capitalize on that, scale that? How does somebody really take that to the next level, if that makes sense?
Yeah, really good question. So if we had, I'm trying to think of a concrete example, so it's a little bit more actionable, I guess, or it's easier for me at least. So if we had, let's say, student loan debt statistics, okay, and it started ranking, you're getting links, awesome. What I do on a monthly basis is go and look at the anchor text that article is getting, and see how journalists are actually quoting it. So perhaps they're quoting student loan debt statistics by race or by age or by gender or something along those lines. And then that would drive additional articles for me to create. Because if I got 5 links over the past month, and every time a journalist linked to it, they said, people between the ages of 21 and 29 had X amount of debt, then to me, I'm like, okay, journalists are looking for this very specific data point. This should be its own article, assuming, if you search student loan debt statistics 21 to 29 and you're in the number 3rd position, but your main page is getting like a bunch of links for it. To me, it's like, cool, let's get that number 1 position. And instead of 5 links per month, maybe I get 15. And so I'll create a dedicated article on the topic that's hyper relevant to, again, it's not necessarily creative. It's just paying attention to what the journalists are actually quoting whenever they link back to you. So that's a big way that I look at it. I also go into Search Console and look for any long tail variations that might work. So that's kind of how I double down and expand on it. It's just like, what are the anchor texts and data points that journalists are referencing, and can I make a more hyper-specific article for it?
In a little bit of a different direction here, I do want to talk to you about your relationship with Pitchbox. Talk to me about what are the top 3 pain points that Pitchbox helped you solve?
Oh man, when I first started, it was me and a spreadsheet and a list of websites and me trying. So, I mean, from right there, getting out freaking spreadsheets, that was like a huge pain point. Also, I remember so I'd have a spreadsheet, I would open up Gmail and I'd try to write this, I would write these in-depth emails when I first started. It's funny. It's kind of like I go full circle. I went from that to then scaling, and now I'm kind of back to that. But trying to figure out follow-up dates as well. So Pitchbox automatically does that with Chasebox, and then actually you don't even need that. It just automatically sends 3 emails, because I would have to, in Gmail, I would have to manually, I would use Boomerang, which was a Gmail extension, to bring it back into my inbox to remind me to send an email 4 days later or 6 days later. And then it would do that 3 times. And then, if I didn't check Boomerang, then it wouldn't come back into my inbox. And then also tracking the conversations and who am I actually talking to? Where are we at in the process? I mean, I can go on and on. Pitchbox has been a lifesaver for me in a lot of ways. And especially once you start adding more team members to this process, that's the big thing. It is personalization, find the right contact information. That alone takes a long time. And Pitchbox, they're able to pull in a lot of contact information. And then we filter it out based off certain criteria of who we want to talk to, editors, et cetera. But just the fact that Pitchbox can actually bring in those emails is a huge time save for us. And then the follow-up, 1, 2, 3, we usually send 3 emails for every outreach. And so just them automating that is massive, because thinking back to the old days, Chasebox is huge. So a lot of the time somebody will reply to you, and then, they're not in this email sequence anymore because they replied. And so then you email them back, but you still need to follow up with them in 4 days again if they don't email you. That's what Chasebox is essentially Boomerang. I remember talking to Michael when he said that they were building Chasebox inside of Pitchbox, and I was like, oh my God, you're building Boomerang. Thank you. I was like, this is massive. So, and then tracking all of the 1 links, and then, seeing if they're still live. A lot of these, we just went back through a ton of our links that we've gotten over the years, and a third of them, a fourth of them are just gone. The pages don't exist anymore, or the site is down. And so keeping track of that, and perhaps the site got hit. So now does that link even help, or should we do a disavow? There's a lot. Let's say that. We usually have a link building manager who oversees all the brands and all of the link building that we're doing. And then we usually have it segmented into, one person would do inspection and personalization. So they would verify that it's a good website, and they would go and find contact information. So that would be one person in the process. And then from there, we would have let's call it the link builder. So they would be the ones who actually build the list and then communicate, write the templates, and I would say do the bulk of the work. Uh, Again, like the inspector, so the flow goes: link builder builds the list, and then uploads it into Pitchbox, or I think we actually use the Ahrefs API, and so they can just build the list directly in there. So they build it, and then it hands off to the inspector slash personalizer, who confirms that it's a good website, no forums, English speaking, good traffic metrics. That's another big feature about Pitchbox. Actually, you can put traffic filters in place. So if it's like less than 1,000 per month, we just don't even worry about it, or don't even reach out to them.
Okay.
And then they find emails, and then it goes back to the link builder, who then creates the outreach emails. And then when people reply, they actually have that conversation.
I'm curious, do you have any let's say stories or data points that demonstrate the impact Pitchbox has had on your growth or how you've changed things?
I think if we just looked at the pure amount of links we've built, I mean, so I remember back in those spreadsheet days, or even when I was using Limlist or Mailshake, or some of these other tools, my goal was 10 links per month. That was like, we're doing great. 10 links per month. This is a good month for us. That's per brand, might I say. And I myself would not be able to manage more than one brand. But now we can get 20, 30 links per month per brand pretty easily because of Pitchbox. And it's just because, I mean, it's just a lot more streamlined. I also think important caveat, which I forgot to mention in terms of features. I remember I talked to Michael about this years ago, and I think it's so important, and people will push back on me when it comes to this. But Pitchbox does not have any tracking pixels. They don't track opens. They don't have any tracking pixels. It's a pure HTML email, and I actually think that is brilliant, because I think so many of our emails don't go to promotions or spam because of that. I don't like tracking opens and clicks inside of emails when you're doing link building. I only care about the reply rate or the win rate. And I think a lot of people end up in the spam and promotions because of those tracking pixels.
Okay. No, that's I'm glad that you noted that, because the fact that it's like sounded like something you said people might disagree with you, but it's
Oh yeah, 100%.
You're like, I'm standing on that mountain. I'm defending it.
Yeah, 1,000%. Because I mean, he made a good point here. It's like, if you were emailing your friend, would you track their opens? It's like, no. And I think that those tracking pixels is why my newsletter ends up in promotions. It's why it ends up in X, Y, and Z, right? Who tracks opens? Email, like MailChimp, Beehive, you name it. It's marketing emails. Tracks that data. So I do think there's something there, and it's surprising to me how many people disagree with that. And they're like, well, I need to know how many people open my email, so if I know my subject line sucks or not. And I'm like, yeah, just pay attention to your reply rate.
Okay. No, I think that's a fantastic note. I think just switching gears here for a sec, I'm starting to wrap things up, and I wanted to look ahead with you and talk about, where do you see link building going? Do you think that there's a trend or shift coming that's going to change the game in the next few years?
I hope. Well, one, I think a lot of shady, crappy link builders just got out of the game because the HCU destroyed so many sites. So I think of a lot of those people just got their sites tanked. So there's going to be less of it, hopefully. Maybe not. But I think I would hope kind of less scalable tactics would become more prominent, and just more personalization. I also think, I say don't do things that are scalable, but I think AI and the personalization it can do can help scale the unscalable, which might make it difficult in 2 years or 1 year, because then it's like, wow, everybody has super personalized outreach. What do we do now? So I don't know. I do think brand mentions is huge. I think digital PR is huge. I think just high quality links. I think there's definitely more of a shift to that. You can see that pretty much everywhere. And I think it's a good idea.
Okay. I mean, I love asking people that question because it's like no one has a crystal ball of what's going to happen in the next few
Yeah.
years, right? But like it's interesting to hear everybody's take, you know. Um, I guess within related to that topic, it's like I know you had to stay on top of a lot of changes being in this industry over the years, and it's easy to kind of get burnt out, maybe even discouraged sometimes when things are changing so much.
Yeah.
What keeps you motivated to keep going? What makes you love doing what you do?
Yeah. That is a good question. um, I
Got to make you
don't.
think on the deep stuff by the end.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I literally had this yesterday where I was like, oh my God, this sucks. Like, we just had a site that kind of got hit again. And I was like, this is so exhausting. Why don't I go do Facebook ads? but, yeah, I don't know I don't think, if I'm being honest, like SEO, building websites, I wouldn't say it's necessarily my passion. Like, I love my fiance. I love spending time in the gym. I love doing jujitsu, and I love like hanging out with our dog. And so I think what motivates me is just being like, if I can get to thresholds that allow me to do more of that and less of this, that's actually where my passion lies. Like, I'm not super passionate about outreach and link building or anything of that nature, if I'm being frank. Um, so I think, yeah, I think what motivates me is the maybe just one. I think there's probably some some old stuff in me where the big motivation is fear of failure more so than anything else, if we're being honest. But also just being able to have freedom. I don't like being told what to do. I don't like being told when to do it. I want to do what I want when I want and on my terms. And I think that's probably the biggest motivation for me.
I feel like you just talk that I feel like that should be the mantra or the motive for probably everyone in the SEO online business. Like
Yeah,
I think they all think the same way. There's a reason that
yeah,
these people congregate in that corner of the internet for a reason.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, final question here. I'm wondering what's next for you coming up with your newsletter, your business, maybe where you're headed. Do you have anything exciting on the horizon?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still in this wild, I'll be honest, like I was saying, quarterly goals. And for a lot of our websites, it's kind of hard to see the future. And I was like, I don't even think I can plan a year out. I was like, I have these ideas of where I would like to be, but like we just had a world rocked by HCU. So I think I'm definitely shifting away from affiliate marketing. Every website that I'm building now has some sort of product tied to it in terms of e-commerce. Maybe it's informational products or community. Um, and for the newsletter, I mean, like with that being said, shitty SEO advice is really more so than anything kind of a lead magnet to get people to buy my lazy link building cohort and course because I love that strategy so much. And it might not be a lot of affiliate marketers who can take advantage of it these days, but there's still a lot of SaaS companies and e-com companies who need those high quality links. And so I'm excited about that. Like the strategy works really well, and you have to rank before it works, right? Like if you're below a DR40, I don't even think it's worth really exploring. But I'm excited for that, and I'm excited. I'm nervous. I'm excited for transitioning some of these sites to e-commerce and what that will look like, because I'm no longer just the head of marketing. I got to worry about product fulfillment. I got to worry about returns and taxes and nexus in different states and all this fun stuff. So I'm excited for that.
That's awesome. I mean, it sounds like you've got a lot on your plate. Kind of a big transition and a lot happening. You're never going to be bored. Sounds like.
Yeah, I probably need less stuff on my plate, to be honest.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, I've really enjoyed today's episode. I learned a lot from it, and I'm excited to see what people say about it. For people who want to find you, reach out, see what you're doing, where is the best place to find you?
Yeah, shittyseoadvice.com. That's my newsletter. And then if you just look me up on LinkedIn, Alex Horseman. Horseman does not have an E, so HORSMAN. And yeah, just DM me or connect with me.
Awesome. Okay. Well, Alex, Thank you so much for giving me your time today. I really enjoyed this and looking forward to seeing what you get up to next.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Appreciate it.
Thank you.